Hello and welcome to the Mega Monthly Zodiac Show. I am the anchor of the show, Sensei Christopher Witecki.
Hello, everyone, and I'm Robbie Hunt. I'm the lead astrologer at Sirius Joy, and I'm also a metaphysical minister.
We have a lot of magic between us, and it's wonderful every month. Nice to see you back, Robbie.
Yeah, you too, Christopher.
We're chained together, honestly. We're having a new campaign coming out. It's going to be funny. We're talking about kind of how it's like to be us, but we're in a new. That's going to be the topic of Gemini. We have a huge transition coming, folks. I can't stress enough how important this moment is going to be. We're realizing that we're going to change 5 planets this month into new signs. And we have this saying today that changing signs means changing minds. You can be changing your mind on a whole bunch of stuff. And we'll be diving deep for each of the 12 signs on our own network, Sirius Joy. At Sirius Joy, you can get a full Mega Monthly of your own. And you can also go to our store on the webs in a couple of days. This will be when Gemini goes live. You can get your own recording of your sun sign or your rising sign at siriusjoy.academy. Siriusjoy.academy. I'll remind you later. But first, Robbie, why don't we just talk about what the hell's going on? I mean, Taurus so far. I mean, we could talk Aries, but it was so intense. I feel like maybe we talk more Taurus than Aries. I mean, Aries was this new ego that we call Wego that had to come forward. And so there was some humble pie there. And it wasn't fun, but I'm glad it's over. Have a comment on that?
I'm glad that Aries is over, but it spilled over into Taurus for me. So I don't know if it is over or not. Just spilled over. It spilled over in that it manifested in Taurus. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but my whole thing with Taurus has been it can create a mansion or a mud hole. And so whatever I was focused on, it just became bigger the entire month. If I was focused on trying to get clutter off my desk, well, here comes more clutter. If I was focused on trying to get other stuff done, other stuff would get in the way. It just didn't seem to matter. And it's still going on as we're recording. It just doesn't matter. It just kept on going and going and going for me. And I'll be glad when Taurus is over.
Yeah, I mean, it's a deep year altogether. When you speaking about Taurus, everything you focused on grew. That's Taurus. But there's miracle growth this year. There's a lot of incredible, profound growth. And we're now kind of in the vortex of Uranus as we move into Unite the Light weekend. We have the Sun-Uranus conjunction Saturday night. That's going to be making it, I think that multiplies it by 4. That's my theory. Quantum manifestation. Like 4 things in your life suddenly change or something to that effect. Taurus has been, for me, refreshing. I was so bogged down by Aries. That's our 12th house as a Taurus. Total questions of faith and determination, all those things. And also, Boogeyman coming out on my 12th. So Taurus is my home. I felt good there. But I agree. Taurus has kept the Aries alive. Like this, we have to redirect our behavior. We have to, basically act differently, be perceived different, not because we owe the worldly thing, because we know the truth that we are what creates reality. And so the focus is on us, I find, in the Wego.
Well, for the Aquarians, Aries is our 3rd house and Taurus our 4th. So whatever we spoke during that Aries transit showed up at our front door, our 4th house, during Taurus. That's kind of how it was for me.
Yeah, well, good. I'm glad it's showing up. And that, goes to this weekend. We hope everyone shows up for Unite the Light. We've worked so hard as a team on this, so much dedication and volunteerism, we have to say. We're learning the economics of light as we go. But Robbie, I'm super excited because the energy is perfect. I mean, we actually planned, I don't know if everyone knows this, but we used wizard magic. We used Astro magic last year in deliberately making the first event with the Sun conjunct Jupiter. And that was its birth. So we are basically kind of like people fuss with the GMO of genetics. We're like fussing with astrology now. We're building things, Frankenstein out of astrology. But it's been wonderful. People grew. Last year, people said that they grew phenomenally in every direction. They really embodied that Sun Jupiter and the optimism and the hope of Jupiter. It just lasted for most people for like 6 to 8 weeks.
And there's also something else that's going on other than that Sun-Uranus conjunction. And that is that both Chiron and Jupiter will move to 25 degrees, Aries and Gemini, respectively. That's in sextile with each other. So I also think those who are attending, either going to be there in Nashville or they're doing the live stream, that there's something that they're going to hear that will propel them and also move them away from some triggered wounding. It gives them an idea about how to resolve it, how to engage with it, how to move past it, whatever it is. So I think that there's a lot of healing in what we're going to talk about during Unite the Light that people can avail themselves of as well. And the impact that it will have will be that Sun conjunct Uranus, boom, kind of thing.
Quantum, 27 at 9. So it's literally a launch, a rocket launch in 4 dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
which is exciting. And exactly right. Unite the Light is designed for us all to come together and be able to go farther with each other than we would have alone. It's so hard to do one thing alone. The myth of doing it alone is just in movies. You can't do it alone. Everything is designed metaphysically to have one or more.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have a group of people who all in the same belief wavelength, you adopt like a soul capital bank, sort of like our entire treasury at your will for a moment. You feel that. And you have to try to feel it, and you have to be connected. I recommend being connected live at the event because you'll feel it. You'll be just, ever stay up all night having a talk with a friend, and it's like the sun's rising, you just still can't go to bed. That's the feeling you get when you go to Unite the Light, and that is what you get when you connect to all the light workers. I just want to talk about just a couple things. We have a key mastermind, Robert Edward Grant. He is a brilliant Taurus, step 25 Taurus, fluent visionary, okay, prolific polymath. I mean, the man gets some crazy math right there. I had to like count my fingers. And he's an artistic explorer. He's going to Egypt again to find stuff the government hasn't found. Are you familiar with his work, Robbie?
Oh, yeah. And especially once you made the comments about his views on zero. I got to look at that. Here goes my mind going, oh, yeah. So I've been digging into all of that.
Yes. I mean, he shows that zero doesn't exist. Okay. So that was a rabbit hole right there. We'll talk about that. We have a key impactor, Mark Wright. He's a Virgo and the basically the person in charge of Be a Helping Hand Foundation. And this is a person who is a self-made businessman in the South, in in Nashville, Tennessee, and he himself has been able to raise over $30 million and build over 65 homes for people who are displaced. So a personal, light worker that can manifest incredible resources. And the focus of him is this man makes money. How, Mark? We need help as light workers to figure out how he did that. He has no issues with that, and what his magic is. One thing he said in our pre-interview is, "I don't believe in donations."
Yeah.
Like, okay, well then how's that going to work?
Well, and he's the epitome of if you see a problem, stop complaining about it. Go do something about it.
I love that. Yeah, that's Virgo. And while you're there, go ahead and clean the couch. And then Wendy Kennedy, one of my favorite mediums, is there, and she's a channel for the Pleiadians. She's on a special panel we have called Will or Survive, where she will channel the Pleiadians. We have another man who's going to channel Metatron, and we have a young lady who's going to channel Archangel. We're going to channel Mary Magdalene. Get all the names. And what we're doing is basically having a debate there about what Earth is going to do in this next chapter. And that debate is all really happening between the 3 entities. And I asked Wendy if she'd done it before. She had. So I was like, oh, okay, you guys do this all the time, I guess. But never to this capacity, she said, where it was very focused with the particular choices of the entities and that it's going to go all to an entity. So we have an entity panel of Mary Magdalene, Archangel, Metatron, and the Pleiadian race.
Oh, I'm looking forward to sitting right down on front and just soaking all of that in, like feeling like I'm going to be outworldly or something in that energy. It's going to be otherworldly, actually.
I'm just so excited that Robert Edward Grant's amazing, but we also have casted the Pleiadians, Mary Magdalene, and Archangel Metatron. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's almost impossible to believe, and it's really, I guess it's the new. And we'll talk about that when we come back, Robbie. Before we move on, let's just do a quick little word from our sponsor. And when we come back, we're going to give you the focus of the Gemini transit and then week by week analysis. We'll be right back.
There's a global renaissance of understanding and awareness happening right now. I want to actually be a part of a catalytic change in systemic transformation. People think that there are no miracles, and others think that the entire universe and life is a miracle itself. You could say the same thing about mathematics. People think that mathematics is random, or others might actually say, as I believe, that the only things we call random are those things we haven't discovered the pattern for yet. The pattern exists, we just haven't yet perceived it. It's outside of our realm of intelligence. You could rank order, in a way, our ascension or understanding as a species in consciousness by the degree to which we perceive randomness versus pattern.
And we're back. Thank you all. Those are two things going on at Unite the Light. I did talk about it. Robert Grant, obviously amazing. You can see his genius right there. But also the clean living panel. We're going to talk about how to actually live clean. That's clean food, clean health, and also a powerful story about helping his wife suffer and then fail breast cancer. So that's what inspired Mike Murphy. He'll be one of our panelists there. It's not, no. All right. Well, let's dive into what's going on for the focus of this month. We're going to kind of do a quick little, just a summary of what we think the key dates and key points are through the month. We're going to do it in chronological order. First though, just to set it up, the sun in Gemini is ultimately us upgrading new thoughtware. That's what Jupiter in Gemini is. It's writing new thoughtware, writing new ways of thinking and processes, and it's the code. It's the code, what you allow yourself to look at. It's how you process things. What are the multipliers? What's the algorithm, etc. So we're coming up with new algorithms. Basically, we've been working on for over a year, expanding our mind outside that common state of awareness of thinking. And so we're now stepping into that new thinking. That is the new. What I believe we're going to realize in the sun in Gemini is that what is new, we always knew. And that's the point, the new. The new is that you always knew. That is the acceptance of your wisdom. That is the acceptance of your past. The new. I always knew. Isn't that funny? Well, when you know you've already always known, then you can make a lot of assumptions going forward. And that's part of the power, because the Earth will then be in Sagittarius, where we rewrite our story. We rewrite our program. We rewrite the architecture of what we're going to be doing as a story. So, the full moon and the new moon are the turning points of a full moon at 6 degrees, new moon for 6 degrees Gemini. So the new moon will be us accepting this new software, maybe running it for the first time. And then the full moon is at 20 degrees Sagittarius, opposing Sun 20 in Gemini. And that's where we change the emotional tone of where we're heading. We'll have to go ahead and cut off some sort of future that we thought we're going to live so we can hold place for another. What are your broad strokes about Gemini and Sag, Robbie?
My broad idea about this whole new is following up on what you said. You've always known that you could be a pilot. You've always known that you could be an engineer. You've always known that. And now you start upgrading the thoughtware to get the skills behind it. That's part of how I'm seeing some of that. And I'm seeing it just with the people around me who are upgrading their skills that maybe that silly Mercury has told them in the past, oh, you can't do that. But this is a different Mercury, and we're engaging with our mind differently now. So I see that we're doing that, but we're doing it now for totally different purposes. Now we're bringing in Sag. We're starting to feel a different life mission. We're starting to feel a different importance in our life, that we didn't just come here to live, to have kids, to pay taxes, and then die, that there is some kind of an imprint that we're making. And that it doesn't mean that our faces need to be carved on the side of a mountain to make that imprint, but that you being a pilot, you being that engineer will make the imprint that is certainly necessary. So that's how I see the new, the thoughtware, and how it moves into Sagittarius, especially with those two moons, how it will move and how we're going to process it during this Gemini transit.
And not just that, but you want that there's evidence there's a new. How about 5 planets changing sign the same month? That's new.
5 planets changing signs in the sign of 5.
Yes, that's also important. Thank you. In the sign of step 5 will change. Talk about what does it take to change your mind? Well, the mind holds on to 5 points at once. That's what we've talked about for a long time. And so all 5 points, suddenly the mind has to grasp something completely new. Boom, out of mind, out of reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's the arc of the month. Now that said, what are the highlights? Well, we'll first start with I think it takes this first hit next Saturday, right? When you tell us about Saturn.
Saturday, May 24th, is when Saturn moves into Aries. It hasn't been there since 1996. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But the big important thing is that it joins Neptune there. And it only leaves one thing in the Pisces signature, and that's the North Node. So a lot of Aries energy that is moving in starting on Saturday, May 24th. But then we also have Mercury being very active, kicking off a new moon.
Yes, we do. And, Mercury moves into Gemini on Sunday, May 25th, and then May 26th on Monday, we have the new moon in Gemini at 6 degrees. Now, 6 is I relate to myself, I accept and receive. This is really a acceptance. Resistance is futile. This is new thought where it's necessary, the way of thinking of myself, and this is the most important. So the way I now think of myself is a cornerstone to this whole transit, that new moon. And that happens actually, right around the corner. So energetically, we're going to be riding it right away as we're in Gemini. Like almost immediately, you think of yourself differently. Yes. Then, of course, I think another grandstand is, the opposition galactic center is playing a role this month. What is that, Robbie?
That role is that the Jupiter and the galactic center oppose each other every 12 years. This time is at 27 degrees. And what this is basically all this info that you have gotten with Jupiter and Gemini. Now, what are you going to do with it? Now you feel the greater need to not just be this walking library going around, but what does this mean? And I think for a lot of you, if you are resisting any of this change, this is going to kick you in the tail. So it really is a big once every 12 year reconnecting with the divine that created you in order to get back in touch into the divine that you really are.
I feel Jupiter goes into an argument with the galactic center. Like Jupiter's gone around. It's like, okay, I've talked to all my people and we want this. And the galactic center's like, what? No, 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 no. Yes, I think it's like a conscious debate. Maybe collective consciousness works itself out, or Jupiter uploads to the Akashic what we've done. I mean, I feel there's a lot of there's a lot of cycles of the planets dumping and giving energies, and this one just feels like a powerful one because the galactic center is the birth canal. It's where we come from. It's everything we know and don't know. And Jupiter's, okay, here's what we know now, sort of like this moment. So it's sort of like a weird clock mechanism, I feel. And what it tells me is like, okay, our brain gets basically rebooted to this new thoughtware. And then our belief structure, the story and all the things, the program itself, there's some sort of something goes on when Jupiter logs into the mothership.
But there's a lot of old teachings that say that this period in time, the Akashic records are changing. That there's parts of them that are going away, that there's parts of them that we don't even need to access anymore. And I don't know if this opposition is going to do anything with that, but I'm keeping it in mind for future oppositions of Jupiter and the galactic center, given that Jupiter rules the Akashic records.
Absolutely. And Sagittarius, and it's the badass party in the universe. To me, this is when the disco light's going to start to turn on. The disco ball, anyway. Totally. Because Jupiter is the partier, it is the leisure suit Larry of white, like it is that guy who shows up on the scene, or the lady in the white dress ready to dance all night. That's the Sagittarius sort of energy. So I do think the party has started because the story has changed. And fascinating enough, it's so that opposition is on a Tuesday. So look at this, Monday new moon, okay? And we didn't even talk about, yes, Saturn and Neptune working together in Aries, crazy powerful. We'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes. But then we have this crazy power spirit. Then we new moon, I'm different with myself. Then we go ahead and say, okay, upload the new thoughtware to the mother drive. And then boom, void of oddity the next day, 2 days later, where it's like, okay, void of oddity being that we found no transits that were within, orb to affect one another in the planets, like a void, of course, of the moon, void, of course, the entire solar system. And the last 3 times we had it, it was kind of strange. As an astrologer who pays attention, that was a weird day. All 3 were weird. One was my birthday, it was still weird.
They were weird, and they were weird in ways that we wouldn't have even anticipated. No one would have thought about it. So, stick that date on your calendar, Thursday, May 29th. And we've been saying to people in the service, don't make permanent decisions because you'll have temporary feelings on those days. So just kind of float around and enjoy it.
Yeah, that day's like starving to death and having a fridge full of food and just sitting there freaking out, what do I want to eat? It was just like... could not get a hold of it. Then we take some time. I think the next significant event is Venus moving into Taurus. Thank God. You want to cover that?
I will. And that's a week in which we don't have a whole lot going on. So after all of that, God universe gives us a week to just kind of catch our breath. It's a week that we're saying, we're powering up the thoughtware. So this is where that install has happened. And now we're starting to power it up and where our new is going to meet the we go. And yeah, on Friday, June 6th, Venus is going to move into Taurus. And when she does, she will eventually start hooking up with Uranus. But Venus into Taurus, this lovely, comfortable, finding value in the things that make you happy. We're certainly going to move into that. And isn't that going to be welcome after all of the push, push, push that we had in the first week, right, Christopher?
Oh my God. I mean, I think I've been running since the year started, as far as the pace of things. But yeah, and here's the thing. I'm a little concerned about that. It gets so quiet. When the world gets so quiet, it's been so noisy. You are like, is there a storm coming? Is there an earthquake? There's like a sense there as an earthling that something might happen, and something may, frankly, right? Something may. But energetically, we have Mercury on Jupiter and Mercury into Cancer. So as you said, it's like there's this explosive moment, right?
Well, yeah, there is. And, you're talking about the quiet, and I'm thinking about when parents don't hear their kids.
Right.
Something's wrong. Something's wrong. I think you may be getting that because prior to moving into Taurus, Venus is going to conjunct Chiron.
Okay. Yeah. There's some.
Okay. At 25. And so that maybe you're already picking that up, that we may be visiting some kind of fear of the last time we sat back and enjoyed the comfort in our lives and something happened. Maybe that's what you're picking up on there.
It's a pattern. I'm an astrologer. It happens every time. That's what I'm saying. Just when your back's down, just when your guard's down. I wish it was not true. I think it's some sort of terrorism, to be honest. But yeah, I think, I just psychically have felt, that we know we have what the Palladians call a frequency war. It's a literal war where one's trying to outloud the other and destroy the other, really. Now, we've known this is so true. This is the base of Star Wars and everything else. But it begins right around that time. I'm hearing, June 6th, 8th, from Wendy as sort of when it starts to rumble from the Palladians. So in that quiet moment, is that when things, the void of oddity might be how it all starts. I mean, just because there's a moment of quiet, no one's expecting it, no one knows what to do. And I'm not saying that we're going to be hurt. Just for the record, we'll talk about this. We'll talk about this at Unite the Light. It's that we're going to be incredibly distracted, incredibly difficult to focus, incredibly difficult to get your job done, just incredibly difficult. It's going to take a Jedi master to rise above the noise. So that's what I'm wondering about, And with Jupiter on Mercury, could that be a trigger of something like that?
Oh, wow. I hadn't even thought about that because, the next week, that is when that happens. Sunday, June 8th is when Mercury conjuncts Jupiter at 29 degrees.
29.
29. So this tested degree of our mind, but the net 11 staying authentic to who we are. As I was hearing you talk about all that, I'm thinking about a hurricane, being in the eye of the hurricane. And watching those walls of water come around. So yeah, on that day, there is that conjunction at 29 Jupiter or 29 Gemini, but then just hours later is when Mercury moves into Cancer.
Yeah.
So that in itself is just a big shift after the small little Mercury and big old Jupiter. And you wonder, even in that kind of up and down, who's going to win? Is it the underdog Mercury? Is it the big guy? This is kind of a David and a Goliath kind of thing. Actually, now I'm just now thinking of it that way, kind of a David and Goliath kind of thing. What's going to win? Our greater purpose or our mind? Will they work together? Will they make peace and walk off in harmony together?
No, not yet. From what I understand, looking at all the signs, this frequency war actually hits that, it really takes off 1 year later. So it's like it stirs, it brews. It's about 18 months from what we're hearing from the Palladians. And that's what I've always felt too, some sort of period like that. I'm glad it's not COVID, glad it's not something else. We'll see what it is. But the point is like, yeah, Jupiter in Cancer is now, on June 9th. That's a big shift in energy because now so much time and attention is going now to your emotions. Jupiter is the biggest investor of energy in the solar system. The capacity to learn is the biggest planet we have as humans. The biggest planet is I learn, I believe. That's the biggest planet. That's what God gave the most mass to, as all the states of awareness. Clearly, this is an environment for believing, learning, expanding. And we hit an emotion, oh boy, does it get deep. Have you ever had a therapy session coming from Gen X? Like it is an endless exploration for years and years where I'll ever get to the bottom of that. So we can get very lost in our feelings. We're going to be deceived at times with Jupiter and Cancer because we'll be adding our feelings up incorrectly, meaning we're not adding it up based on our heart. We're adding it based on thoughts or evidence or feelings or wounds. And so this is where, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you, it's prime for a frequency war as of June 9.
Because, Sunday, June 8th, Mercury into Cancer, Monday, June 9th, Jupiter into Cancer. And then on Wednesday, June 11th, a Cancer ruled 20-degree full moon in Sag.
A master Cancer full moon in Sag. That means that we emotionally, the full moon is actually a cutting of ties, a cutting of emotional attachment. So we're going to cut emotional attachment to the old happy ending we once had or dark ending we once had. We all have an ending to our story that we imagined from the beginning till death do them part is imagination ending, and and he retired happily is an imagination ending. And so whatever that imagination ending is, we change it. We change where we're going. We change our feelings about it. And again, if you want to hijack Earth consciousness, what they do, they hack us. I'd hack on around Wednesday, June 11th, because we're going to be emotionally vulnerable. And that's one day, if you hack there and create an event there, well, then you may change your entire emotional outlook for the future.
The space will certainly be there because of the 0 in that 20.
It's a good pregnancy for some sort of a negative spell, negative intention, I should say.
Yep. And then the week after that, whatever happens, we're going to be pivoting because the next week we've got 3 squares. We'll go over that later on, but we have 3 pretty big squares happening that next week. And then Christopher, Mars moves into Virgo.
Yeah, Mars in Virgo then just makes it too real. I think that's, again, can go positive or negative because the ego is part of you gets frustrated, and Virgo gives you the reason why. And then another reason. Here's another one. And did you know there's 4 other reasons like that? I haven't even told you about the stuff coming around the corner. God damn it, Virgo. There's just too much to look at and ego to respond at. So it's sort of like a minefield, if you will. I think Mars and Virgo this year where you have to not respond. Now, if you're running the new ego software, the new ego hardware, actually, and you have the ability your ego to step out and look at an alternative. I think that's what the ego is. Like, hold on, is there an alternative? Because the old ego is just like, there's no alternative. You must go down for me to be high. Well, it's over here. Maybe just one little step this way. I think that's really what relieves the Earth is that one little step this way or that way. But Mars there, if you can just take that approach with Virgo and just opt out of some details and not get triggered, I think you're in a better place, right? What's your interpretation as a Virgo, though? You're not a Virgo, but you have a Virgo moon at 20, right? So you're a master.
Well, I've got a 24-degree Virgo moon, but I also have Pluto and Uranus there as well in the 8th house. So, I deal with Virgo all the time. But the thing that you have to learn about with Virgo is the imperfection, the perfection of the imperfection. That you have to see that in order for the perfection to shine, there has to be the contrast of the imperfection. So if you keep focusing on the imperfection, you don't see the perfection. And if you keep focusing on the perfection, then sometimes the imperfect way in which life unfolds, you miss. So with Mars being there, it's literally about what you choose to take action on. And, so choose wisely how you decide to be picky about this or not picky about that. Choose wisely because, eventually Mars is going to run into that south node there as well.
Indeed. And at that point, there will be a wrecking ball. There will be a shift storm. Everything you might, want to phrase as a good headline to get people to watch.
There we go.
It's a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah. An Instagram clip.
Absolutely. Yes. That's going to be a very sticky moment. All right. So let's look at the first week. The first week is from May 20th to May 31st. This is from step 0 to 10 is what we're going with. So we start at 0 Gemini and we end up at 10 Gemini by the end of this first decan. And we say, in this first week, actually. And overall, this is a time where you are going to change the way you think with yourself. This is the time where you will, run the new thoughtware, the new way of thinking about yourself. Now, The basic theme of this month and of this week is initiating the new new. In other words, it's time now to look at all of life as new, give yourself a clean slate, but base it on everything you have known. And that means that there's no more argument about if I know or don't know. Jupiter in Gemini says, hey, Jupiter's an audit. Your mind should not question anymore. If you do, you're wasting time. That's the whole point. I think sometimes we're put into arguments because meanwhile, the cat burglar is getting in the house. The main theme is initiating the new new, and that is from Saturn moving into Aries and Gemini 4 step day when we have this breakthrough where we reboot. I think step 4 is going to be the reboot. Now, the subtopic of the week is opening to a new lexicon. So this is where I'm going to go crazy, Robbie, with all kinds of new word inventions I've been coming up with. Mercury into Gemini, the new moon at 6 degrees Gemini. We're basically coming up with a whole new way of describing ourselves, words that aren't weighted. And with Jupiter opposing the galactic center, we talked about that. But that Jupiter opposition is ultimately us uploading and downloading, from Mother Universe, the new data, the new story, the new arc, but also I think informing Mother Universe, how many of us are getting it and how many of us aren't. So you are spied on by Jupiter. But I think there's a key question we give that helps it out. Robbie?
The key question is always answering for what purpose is all of this going on. And so the purpose on this particular first week, do I believe I can embody this mental upgrade? So honestly, do you believe it? Do you believe that your thought processes can change, that you can think differently, that you can work with a whole new lexicon, that you can speak to yourself differently, that you can process your thoughts, all of it? Do you really believe that you can embody this? And if you believe it, it will be a whole lot easier. But if you don't believe it, at least try to take it in steps. I believe I can at least embody this. I believe I can at least embody that, and take it in small steps. Some of you may be ready to take the whole thing. But either way, it starts with believing. And where does a belief come from? The 0, 1, and the 2. That you're going to protect those thoughts. You're going to love those thoughts. And you're going to feel that they are a part of you. That will help you embody it and believe more in it. And so certainly with what we've got going on in that first week, it could be a challenge. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but give yourself the space to allow for a mental upgrade.
And also, the Pluto at 3 retrograde, you have to protect your belief in yourself. You cannot allow yourself or anyone else to degrade your beliefs at this time. You must maintain the wall. You must be black and white like a Scorpio and just, walk away or not be affected or not second guess yourself at all. It's time to get strong in our belief in ourselves, period, right?
Well, and Pluto during Gemini is the only planet that's in retrograde. So that in itself is a big focus of what's the one thing you got to take internal. That's the belief of Aquarius innovation and what that will do in your life. And believe that if there is something, walking away, leaving, to let it go, to know that that is time and that is part of the divine flow, and believe in it.
Yeah, so to keep it to a very simple example, you say, hey, I'm going to go do this. And they're like, do you know what you're doing? Do you even know how to do this? Boom, I blocked that. They're having me question my belief in myself? No, I'm not entertaining that for 1 second. I don't care how I look, anymore, says Leo rising, because at the end of the day, I can see through Pluto, you don't hold that up, you got a real problem. So let's all be stubborn. Let's take it from my Taurus lead.
There we go.
If you look at the arc of the week, then this first week from step 0 to step 10, it's all the exploration of yourself this first week, thinking about yourself, pondering yourself. It's great that this happens after Unite the Light, Robbie, because after Unite the Light, I just want to walk on beaches and think about stuff. So it's a very good time. And really, it's like Saturday on the 24th, we have the Sun trine Pluto, so there's some death and life there, and Mercury conjoins Uranus, so the mind gets on board, okay, and thinks about higher, thinks in terms of higher. Now, Uranus is at 27, a step number we're seeing a lot of this month, by the way. We're seeing the step number a lot of launching. And then the next thing that happens is Saturn, right?
The next thing that happens is Saturn, when it moves into Aries, doing that on Saturday, May 24th, doing that at 11:35 p.m. Eastern. And we did mention just briefly the last time that happened was 1996. So if you want to see what kind of upgrade Saturn's going to be doing, you could go back to 1996. Now, just a little bit about what this is for us. First off, both Saturn and Neptune are only going to be in Aries up until around September or so, when they both start their retrograde back into Pisces. They will do one last tour of Pisces before Neptune is good and gone for 165 years, and Saturn for 29. When they move into Aries full time, that's going to be February of 2026. So we're getting a little bit of a preview about what kind of action we're going to have to take. Action that is centered in spirit, and action that is disciplined, and action that is waiting on divine timing. So you're going to get a couple of previews of that when Saturn moves into Aries. And again, we're saying go back to 1996 and look at where you were making upgrades. And in the individual megas, Christopher and I talked about that for you on each sign, where you were probably making these upgrades and where you're now taking it to a newer level, to a more conscious level, and to see that this is preparing you for different kind of action starting in 2026. And then on the very next day is when Mercury moves into Gemini on the 25th.
Yeah. It's like, to me, Saturn, you have this Mercury conjunct Uranus, so we take it to higher heights. Sun trines Pluto, so our heart's like, I'm done with this. I'm done with doing this. I mean, the Sun trining Pluto's at 3, so that means that we decide in our hearts and our minds, I believe myself. Therefore, Pluto, defend this shift. Right? Mercury then crosses Uranus and takes some acid, and then boom, Saturn's in Aries. Like, okay, this is the line right here. Saturn just, Pluto is the line itself, but Saturn's what draws the line, abuses the line, crosses the line, right? Saturn's the offender there. And so that means, okay, we're going to just kind of cut off, and the old ego is dead, the new ego is born. And then we go to Monday, May 26th. After that weekend, okay, I accept myself. This is the new me. This is the way I think, the thoughtware. This is my relationship to myself. I am not a victim. I am not left behind. I am not abandoned. I am the controller. I am step aside. And that step aside, I think, is Saturn and Aries. I think we're feeling like we're something. Boom. When I think about 1996, my life just took off as an adult. Now, mind you, I was 23. So I was an adult very young. I had a son coming. I mean, it's just like, it was just time to grow up. Time to grow up. And what I remember about that time was that I felt the strength to. Like, I didn't have to, like, pony up or have to get myself motivated. I was like erect, up, ready to go. Saturn like put a pole on my back and like straightened me up. And the Aries energy was like march, march, march. So that's how I felt it. The energy of that time.
For me, 1996 was starting to date my second husband, and it was a different idea of that new. I knew that maybe this isn't a marriage that I should do, but I did it anyway. But what did I learn? Boy, I sure did learn a lot with that marriage. So I guess in the end, I'm grateful. So for me, it just taught me a whole lot about the responsibility of my own actions and being able to voice them. And that if I don't feel like I can voice them, then I'm in the wrong situation. I'm with the wrong people and the wrong company and the wrong idea, whatever that could be. If I can't voice them, then it's not the right place. So that's where the upgrade was for me personally.
Yeah, to me, same thing. I knew at the wedding. I had made a mistake. I made a mistake, like uh-oh, this is not gonna be a fun honeymoon. Yeah, and that's how it unfolded. Yay for us. Yeah, that was actually a lesson. Thank you for that, because I didn't know and I did anyway. So this was my biggest lesson.
But hold on, Christopher. But you know what? You and I both were such very different people back then. God loved those people who married us and then who ended up divorcing us.
Yes, totally. Well, I was grateful. And at the end of the day, I think there was different motives there in that last Saturn. When that last Saturn was happening, remember, Saturn had just been in Pisces, introducing all the karma.
Yeah.
Introducing all of it. So we were introduced for 2.5 years, like, you got this shit, you got this, and did you know you're this in the past life? Like, God, you're just filled with all this stuff. So by the time Saturn and Aries were like, blinders on, just go. And I think that was bit. Now there's wisdom. It's like, hold on with the blinders, hold on. Like a little bit of wisdom there. But anyone who's under, I would say under 35, under 37 maybe, it's your first time with Saturn and Aries. So you got to learn where your strength is. You're going to learn why you're strong. You'll learn why you can endure. That's part of it's kind of a boot camp, Saturn and Aries, really.
So you and I, as these wise sages who have been through it before, if you want to contact us, we'll be happy to help you.
Oh yeah, totally. Or join Sirius Joy. It's embedded in.
There we go.
Yeah, totally. $20 a month, you can learn this stuff.
Mhm.
But then we have the opposition after that. I mean, excuse me. We have, I guess, we have the new moon at 6, and then we have the opposition to the galactic center. Now, quickly, what is the magnificence of this?
Well, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I think the magnificence of it. Now, you were talking about feeling that there was a lot of contrast and conflict with it. But I think for those who will move into it, the magnificence is that you, for at least a brief period of time, see yourself the way that God the universe sees you. The galactic center is how we got here to Earth. It's the portal through which we got into this galaxy. And when you just think about what that took, the bigness of Jupiter, that's how big you were to get through that galactic center, to get yourself to a human body that could get down here to Earth. Do you realize how tightly packed full of divinity that you are? And I think on this day, or well, I say this day, Jupiter moves to 27 on May 27th, and it sits at 27 for about a week. So we got a whole week of this, okay? And I think that you will see how densely packed full of divinity you are. There's a new graphic and a new mantra, how densely packed that just the amount of divinity that you got right there could move mountains. And that it's just a period of time. It's our 12-year transit where we step 12-year transit, learn something new about ourselves, furthering on learning about that galactic center that's such a part of who we are.
Yeah, I mean, your galactic center in your chart is, where you promised God. You promised. Yeah, you promised. And now Jupiter's on the outside looking over and going, and let's from where I stand, I don't see it. Like I think Jupiter calls us out, calls the galactic center out in that regard. Being too packed full of what was it? Wisdom. I've found
Packed
a lot
full
of
of divinity,
yeah. I mean, I've been
densely
constantly
packed full of divinity.
yeah. That sounds like me last night in the bathroom. Like I was dancing. And I could not have any divinity, I'll tell you right now. So I understand what that means. No, but seriously, folks, you can feel when you have just too much coming in on you. And I think you're going to have that moment. Sorry, Robbie. Sorry about that. Went off on that one.
There's certain pictures you just shouldn't be putting in my head.
Yeah, well, sorry, folks. But that's how it feels.
This
I
is
mean,
what
that's
I
how it
have to
feels.
put up with, folks.
I know she is,
Okay, all right.
divinely tortured here. But at the end of the day, I think that's how it feels. I mean, sorry, it does. When you are densely packed with that, the only thing I can refer to is I've had too much Thanksgiving. Now that said, what about the void of God coming the next couple days after that?
Okay, so void of God, again, to remind everyone, this will be the fourth and final day in 2025 of where we have no exact alignments, meaning that the planets are not inexact. And remember, exact is degree in minute. No exact alignments of, squares and sextiles and all that other kind of stuff, blah, blah. It's a day in which there's no planetary guidance, boundaries, bumpers, guardrails, and you're just kind of floating around. So we're encouraging you to use that in a positive way, to think outside the lines, to color outside the lines, to just go into an area that you haven't been before and just kind of see. You're not stuck with what you might come up with or what you might experience, but you are just looking to expand your horizons just a little bit. And then on the next day, put into perspective what it is that you thought and you engage with and that kind of thing. But don't make those decisions, the permanent decisions on that temporary day. You may have some temporary feelings that were good for you to come to understand, but you don't need to act on them. You don't need to do anything with them. So it's a very interesting day. And again, a day that we as a staff, once we got in, it's funny, on all three of those days, we as a staff were together.
Yeah.
And so we watched how each other was dealing with it or not dealing with it. We saw how, even though we knew it was coming, as we're all in the middle of like, what's going on? We were, oh yeah, this is one of those void of God days. We as astrologers who were talking about it, and we didn't even put it on our own calendars to pay attention to it. So it was an odd day, and this one won't be any different.
Yeah, the void of date is Thursday, May 29th. It's where no planets or connected to each other legitimately. It's like a void of course with the moon, although it's void of everything, of course. And I agree with Robbie. So you're drifting in space with, calling down the ground control to Major Tom kind of feeling. I think what happens is because God takes the air pressure off, kind of. So what happens? It takes the air pressure off. You suddenly you realize a lot of things. You realize you're sore. You realize there's a door there. Things that you just didn't notice. I think that's the biggest thing I would say is an underlying. But we're still studying this, and it's a great discovery. The very next day, though, I mean, think about this. Mercury then conjuncts the Sun with Cazimi at 9. 9 in a 9-year, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
9 myself, not 9. And that 9 is, run the software. That is like, turn on Skynet. That is the moment where we go ahead or could turn on Skynet. I mean, if there is something like that, that'd be the time. I'll be, in line with my, Proteini talking about it. But at the end of the day, it does mean go, go, go. And that's how we end this week. Go, go. Not on your market set. Those are 2 days prior. I would say the void is the get set, right? And I would say just prior to that is the Jupiter opposing the galactic center. Get on your mark. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
All right, well, we have a couple of commercials that pay for the show. We'll be right back with more on the month of Gemini. Keep streaming. All right. Oh. Oh. Coming from marketing, what would you say, first of all, is one of the flaws that we see in marketing right now? Or what is marketing missing currently?
I think it's missing that energetic connection. There's that bridge that needs to be done. I find that it's been hard for us to translate our daily practices and devotions into the marketing world because we see it as something that we want to manipulate and persuade, and we're not fully connecting the heart. So that's where you see. But these days, when there's so many tools and there's so much AI, and you can do marketing, any level of marketing right now. And then you start hearing, and it's not a coincidence, about authenticity. This authenticity, in my opinion, and at least for us light workers and light walkers, comes from really knowing yourself. And I believe that's when astrology, human design, and other modalities are crucial to help us translate that we are, or the potential. Sometimes we're not fully there, but the potential of that we know that we are, into that daily practice, into the way that we are expressing ourselves, and making it something that is as sacred.
Wow. Melly is so genius. She's from Colombia. She's one of our main presenters on the first day. And she has really cracked the code of that, the problem with light workers and marketing. Like, we can't market. We all say, I hear this all the time. Oh, I can do what I do. I just don't like putting myself out there. I hear that all the time. I don't like putting myself out there. You have to, you know what I mean? Like, and how, and what do we do? And what Melly has found is a formula out of your human design chart, but also your astrology, but also other aspects that extracts the authenticity of who you are. And then helps you build an advertising campaign based on that authenticity, which I could have used 10 years ago, Robbie.
I'm excited for this one for a couple of reasons. The authenticity part, I understand the whole thing about the hesitancy to be out there. I certainly experienced that when I first initially got involved with Sirius Joy. And now, yeah, go ahead, turn the camera on. I don't care. But also to bring in international speaker. How great is that? So we're uniting the light outside of the U.S. And isn't that great?
It's wonderful. And you know, it's part of you. I'll just tell you, Millie came last year. She was a diamond at the time. She came last year. She was inspired last year. She came out with products since last year. And she has grown significantly in 1 year from going to Unite the Light because she just needed the, yes, this is a good thing to do. And the fact that we're tied into, she's in Colombia and she's an ally and it's a business ally and we're going to help each other too. So it's just like what can come of this event. We just can't tell you, but that's a great example. I'm excited too. She also teaches you how to train AI in your voice. Wow. I mean, now I'm kind of curious about AI. Like, oh, you can make me. Oh, well, then let's go ahead and look at it. It'd be kind of fun. But Melly's on the
Well,
first.
and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to walk all over you there. Go ahead and finish that up.
No, that's it. That was my last minute. That was my last thing. Catch her on the first day of Unite the Light. Amazing, brilliant person.
Well, and with all of the stories that have come up about AI and the big green evil that it could be, we need light workers involved with it to help balance some of that out and possibly override any of that comes up. So we need to be involved in this. It is not going away. Okay, not going away. And so we need to put a positive imprint on it before the bad guys get a hold of it fully.
I'm glad you brought that up because you actually are talking about the conscious capitalism, which is the third panel we have on Sunday. That conscious capitalism has an AI expert, Bree McLennan. She is coming in from Australia, presented from Australia, so we're becoming more global again there. And Bree works for the Australian government as a watchdog person. Like she is looking at AI just from that perspective, a light worker that understands it top to bottom. So those are great topics. And yes, I think we have to. We'll talk about it on that Sunday, but we need to embrace AI. Like it needs to work for us. You know, and not worry about it, working for it. So, well, with that, we can move on to the second week, folks. And Robbie, you're going to actually coach this one. Tell us what happens in the second week.
Yeah, let me walk you through this second week. This second week will be June 1st through the 7th. We're covering steps 11 through 17. 11, this I become state of awareness that is seeking authenticity, to step 17, an I direct kind of Saturn ruled, meaning that we're going to be rather serious when we end up this week. We're calling this week Powering Up the Thoughtware. So if you want to think about having installed a new program on your computer, maybe updating the app on your phone, and this is the reboot, and this is when now you run it for the first time. And this is what we're calling the new is meeting the we go. This is the first time that you're taking out that inner knowing that always knew out to everybody else and meeting the other people who always knew, because remember, like attracts like, right? So it's a period of time where, especially because during this week, Venus moves into Taurus, I think we're going to be much more relationship focused. We're going to be much more thinking about the kinds of people that we're connecting with. You know, this is going to be a bit after Unite the Light. So it just reminds us that the people that we're looking for are out there, but understanding that they're going through the same upgrade. So we're probably going to have some patience with each other as well as we go through. Now, this is a lighter week in terms of a lot of the transits and stuff. I mean, the heavy part is mostly through that first week of the Gemini transit. But during this particular week, on Sunday, June 1st, is Venus conjuncting Chiron, and that's at 25 Aries. And we brought that up earlier, that where you could feel an old wound starting to come up. And I'm going to put a little bit of a different spin on this than maybe Christopher would have. You know, Venus teaches us about things that are of value, and there have been wounds that we have valued until we saw what trash they were. Have you ever had, you know, a ring and you just thought it was gold, it was beautiful, it was wonderful until the plating started coming off? That's how we can do with wounds every once in a while. And I think Venus conjuncting Chiron at 25 is showing us you don't have to go back to that old wound because it didn't serve you. You may have gotten away with this. You might have had this happen or whatever, but no, don't go back there. That wound never served you. And so I think it's just a reminder to stay in your integrity of what is valuable and to focus on that. Then on Thursday, June 5th, Mercury is going to square the North Node. Well, what's so special about that is it's going to happen at 23 degrees. It's Mercury that's in Gemini squaring the North Node in Pisces at its Grand Master degree. Now, this is about what you think about your ability to move into spiritual matters, to move into deeper dream time, to take your ideas into something kind of ambiguous. You know, spirit is ambiguous. We've been arguing about spirit for thousands of years. It's not going to stop. So it's the ability to kind of combine those two. And because it's a square, you know, you're going to have to just keep doing this. And then on Friday, June 6th is when Venus does move into Taurus at 12:42 a.m. Eastern Time. And it spends time there reminding you of the power of value, and that when you invest in value in yourself and the value of others, when you see value, when you see respect, but when you do that in your relationships, that if you don't value another, you can't love them. You've got to have those things in order to see someone for who they are. And so it's a reminder that that is necessary for your materialization energies, as we have started calling it there at Sirius Joy. That in order for anything to materialize, you got to bring the best of it up. And that is where you see the respect, where you see the worth, and where you see the value. So, Christopher, a lot going on there. And at the end of the week, it leads us to an interesting question.
Yeah. Learning is fun, isn't it? I don't know what your point was in that question, because Robbie wrote that one, but I'll say that I see the logic in the sense that, you know, what we give you to question as our question of the week, those are powerful advice. Those are like, they're like anti-affirmations or something. They kind of like, they make your mind go in the right direction without pushing your mind. That's the best way to put it, because you have the free will of a question. But the interesting thing is, like, you have to go ahead and get into the fun of it. I think that's the whole point. Like, and not get caught up in the wordsmith and the word wars and the word salad, because words are spells. Go ahead.
They are. Well, here's where I will add to where Robbie came up with that. I have an Adobe subscription. So Illustrator, Power, Photoshop, all that stuff. Yeah. And it's all web-based now. It's all on the cloud. Yep. Do you know how often they update those programs?
All the time.
Okay, and if I sit here and complain about it, I'm just gonna create havoc in my life. So I'll leave my computer on at night. I get up in the morning and it has rebooted. Adobe has reinstalled something, and now my toolbar is in a different place. Now this is here. Now blah 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 blah, and it's frustrating. But I have to just focus on, okay, what new thing did they add? What security bug did they fix? Because this is fun, isn't it? It's fun getting the new tools. It's fun. But the learning how to use them and what it takes to get everything organized, sometimes it's not fun.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Well, the focus, I think, is focus on the fun. Mm-hmm. You know, I have to say, in this next transit, I do think we have shift hitting the fan. I still think it's going to be in early June, as we mentioned so far. I still feel like that void of God is part of it. And I feel like, you know, when shift hits the fan, you have got to keep your energy up, your positivity up, your heart up. That's what a light worker is doing. That's what a light is walking the light, a light runner who runs the light, a light worker who works in the light. You've got to focus on the light, which is what you are being delighted by. Mm-hmm. The light to you is where you put the energy. So I think it's a really good question as a beta there. Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, yeah, I'm with you with Adobe.
Yeah.
I'm with you completely. Like they're interesting. Well, they're losing a lot of ground in, you know, market because, you know, Canva's like taken off by, you know, wild compared to them. And it's because they're more affordable, you know, plus it's web browser based, which is crazy, which you expect to update all the time. It's just a whole different psychology. I think we're seeing new software is kind of take over the world. I'll say now that Jupiter's in Cancer, you see new software is lead. That's
probably so.
Thought about that. Do we get into Venus? I don't know. I mean, are we done with week 2? I can't recall.
Yeah, we do. Venus moving into Taurus ends the bigger impact of that week. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when things. Thank God, as God will, like, you know, get us drunk with cheesecake. I can't wait.
I'm ready.
All right, so week 3, it's holding emotional space for wild ideas, and that's really true. Holding emotional space for wild ideas. That's because we have now Jupiter in Cancer. we're going to realize that we are emotionally like a 2-year-old. You know, the terrible twos as a baby, you've heard this, the terrible twos, where the baby's like, no, no, not with this. How about pudding? No, how this? No. Like the baby's just finding the word no for the first time. But mostly what the baby is doing is experiencing its I feel state of awareness, step 2. Step 2, year 2, this is when you develop. The steps are synchronous with our age. And so therefore, we are moody. And the problem with the baby is not that it doesn't like pudding, it's that the baby doesn't know how to cope with the fact that it doesn't like pudding. Okay? That's going to be humankind with Jupiter and Cancer. We're going to have a hard time coping. We're going to see a lot of people just breaking down and their knees going weak and them just fake fainting, you know, stuff like that, over the top because there's not the skills in place. So I think that, you know, we have to hold space for wild ideas, which means we have to tell the baby something might freak you out in about 2 minutes. Just so you know, something might freak you out. You know, like you prepare the baby, because if the baby knows that there's a feeling coming, the baby can brace itself, and also it has the arc of understanding that it thought it was bad, it turned out to be okay, I made it. It thought it was bad, it turned out to be okay, I made it. You need that arc of growth. Now, the subplot of this week is reconciling self-love to the new thought-aware verse, and we do say that thought-aware verse. And, you know, this comes from Jupiter and Mercury now into Cancer. So the thought-aware verse is focused on feelings. You have this new thought-aware where you come first, but now let's focus that thought-aware on feelings. So the new thought-aware verse is processing emotion, which means it's processing history. It means processing karma. It means processing everything. You know, emotion is your terabyte of information, whereas Mercury is more in bytes, this byte, that byte, etc. That's the size difference of consciousness that each do deal with. And so what happens is you have to really look at self-love in a new way, because you have to add on the needs of this self-nurturing, this baby side of you, right? And this is why the sun's in Gemini. Remember, the sun's in Gemini. We're talking about Gemini, but so much emotion is coming up from that. And so I feel that's the issue. Now, we give a question this month that's supposed to help, Robbie.
And the question is, do I believe this mental upgrade is inevitable? It is, by the way. I think that this mental upgrade is so powerful that you're going to have to fight it to not do it. And will there be people out there? Yeah. I don't think that they're our Sirius Joy family, but there will be people who they won't do it. And of course, that's your prerogative. You get that right. We're not going to take that away from you. But there is a whole element of this mental energy that is necessary in order to manage the mind so that the mind doesn't take over in survival mode the way that it has done in the past, that it is participating in the thrival mode. So yeah, this mental upgrade is inevitable. And do you believe that that is the case? And if so, are you willing to open up, accommodate, and surrender to it?
Yes, and that's a complicated question, because I think what we don't want is someone outside of us taking over our mind. And we are very sensitive to that these days, especially after COVID. There's a lot of like mind game there, you know, trying to like talk us into certain values that we didn't necessarily have before, under the construct of what, not a conversation we'd had before. And so I think we've been under that attack. So I think to some degree there's going to be this emotions coming up about mind control, emotions coming up about being lied to, emotions coming up. And I'm not really referring to anything specific here, but it does look like with this whole Gemini transit that we learn something we don't like thinking about. I'm just saying, it's very likely because it's set up perfectly for a mind, you know, a mental challenge, basically. And that might be something that happened when Kennedy was assassinated. I don't know, you know, what the information would be. It may not be political. Maybe the aliens land on the front, you know, White House lawn, and Mr. President is serving Kentucky Fried Chicken, and we're like, what are you doing? But it might be something like that. And him, he's a Gemini, so he'll be representing most likely that refuse to think differently point of view, right? He tends to be that way. Even though he's changing his mind every day. So my point is, like, it's going to be mental confusion, I think. And in this particular week here, it's when it starts to get really riled up, if you will. And that riling up is the full moon. So just to arc the week, and then we'll go deep for Sunday. On June 8th, Mercury goes over Jupiter, Mercury goes into Cancer, and then Monday, Jupiter goes into Cancer. So this weekend has like sort of the first weekend entering into the week is sort of a emotional mental shift. Then Tuesday, a lot happens on the 9th, June 9th, Mercury squares Saturn, conflict. Venus enters into squares Pluto, conflict. And then full moon, the biggest conflict of the month. And then we have Sun squared nodes, conflict. And then Venus opposes Black Moon Lilith, conflict. So Robbie, would you like to discuss the first conflict?
Oh, the first conflict. Well, let's talk about Mercury conjuncting Jupiter, Mercury going into Cancer, and then Jupiter going into Cancer after that. But that conjuncting Jupiter happens there at 29 Gemini. We talked a little bit about that earlier. And I think that this is for the integrity of your mind. I'm going to piggyback there on something that Christopher said about realizing you better be careful about the kind of info that you let in, because we know where we've been swayed with that before. They call that, like, gaslighting, propaganda, stuff like that. So I think that, yes, after the COVID experience, we are much more aware of that. And we should be. And so with this conjunction there at 29 Gemini, it is, I think, what you're going to allow, what you don't. And if you don't allow something, that you genuinely know why, that it's not out of reaction, that it's not out of fear, but that it's not in your belief system. It isn't authentic to you, and that you stay into that. But then when Mercury and Jupiter move into Cancer, how I see that is, Mercury gets all the way to 21 Cancer at the end of this Gemini transit. So it's going to grease the skids that Jupiter's going to come in and go to only 2 degrees. And 2 degrees is that moon Cancer ruled degree. And part of what we say at Sirius Joy is that when you move to 2 degrees of a sign, you can feel into the sign. You can feel what that planet's going to do with the sign. And at the same time, Neptune's going to be at 2 Pisces, while Jupiter is at 2 Cancer. So now we've got everything that's happened with Mercury in Gemini, Sun's still in Gemini, but Mercury's moved out. And now here's all this emotion. Here's Neptune at 2 degrees, Aries. Here's Jupiter at 2 degrees, Cancer. And that's why we're saying this is about holding emotional space, because we're going to have wild ideas, but there may be some people around us who'll have some ideas that we don't want. And we've got to hold the space so that we respond to those ideas and that we don't react to it. So that's a big first part of the week there, Sunday, June 8th and Monday, June 9th.
Yeah, and I have to say, once Jupiter hits 2 Cancer, you'll have access to all emotion and all Akashic records. And so, it's one of those times where you may see a public official, do something that you have seen over and over again, back when you're in Peru, back those times in Africa, but those lifetimes that you had over in romance, and like, you are going to emotionally associate with every time some a-hole has made you feel that way. Okay.
Yep.
And it's really that you're sick over that feeling. You're not really necessarily making it about a person. It's not really what it's about, because even if there's someone on TV like Hitler who is like telling us all this crazy stuff that's crazy, it's the feeling we don't like. I mean, Hitler, we don't even know. Like, in that moment, it's that feeling you're just hating. So I do think you might get a really bad taste in your mouth around feeling. I just want to put the warning: you're feeling multidimensionally. You're feeling 5D. You're feeling quantum. You are feeling it in lots of other regions than what you have in front of you. And so what you have to deal with is just your feelings in front of you, and realize that all the baggage you're adding to it is some work to do in Cancer. We'll talk about that next month. We'll do that work in Cancer.
But I also feel like if you can feel into it, you also can feel your ability to detach from it as well, with Pluto at 3 degrees in Aquarius. I think you'll be able to just do it like that if you'll decide with your mind you're going to do it.
Well, there's the astro magic right there. It's that having Pluto at 3, if you can't get rid of a feeling that you don't want to feel, you need to find how it goes against believing in yourself.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
Goes against believing in yourself, then Pluto's gonna be like, get the fuck out. Like, Pluto's gonna, like, the energy's gonna push it out for you. And you're like, oh, I told you I shouldn't. I told you not to call, Pluto a name, my bulldog. And the energy will just push out if it's based on a belief and maintaining a belief in yourself. So I'm not going to feel that, because that undermines what I believe in. I believe in that I can overcome this. I believe in that I'm bigger than this. So no, I cannot feel this now. No, Pluto, take care of it.
Yep. And with Venus in Taurus, that is not me. I am not worth. No, that's not me. I'm worth more than that.
Yes, Venus and Taurus. Like, yes, looking down on, like, this is so second class.
So yesterday.
So true. Well, then we move on to Tuesday the 9th. Like, Monday split, I don't know if that's right. Tuesday the 10th, right? If that's Tuesday the 9th. But nonetheless, okay, I see what the point is here. Mercury squares Saturn. So on Tuesday, Mercury squares Saturn and Venus squares Pluto. And what that means is suddenly the mind has objectives or has objections to the way Saturn is managing inner self. So there's kind of a fight there, Mercury versus Saturn. Who wants to bet who's going to win? Okay. It's going to be Saturn, I think, at the end of the day. And then Venus squares Pluto, which is really just, I think divine feminine playing hard to get, to some degree. But what it is Pluto's like, come on, I make the rules. And Venus is like, I don't think so. But there's a square there about what you can open up to. And so I think that square has to do more with like, if I'm going to open up to this luxury and this value, then I've got to do what about believing myself? And maybe just reinforces it. You have to believe in yourself, period. Like you have to, and so there's this, very tense week. That's why I feel like June 8th to the 14th, steps 18 to 24. This is the most tumultuous part of the Gemini transit. I think this is where things get really rocky. In fact, actually, really rocky. How about Robbie, the full moon?
Rockin' Robbie. I have been called that before. Okay, so the full moon on Wednesday, June 11th, is at 20 degrees Sagittarius. That's going to happen at 3:43 a.m. Eastern time. So for the middle of the night for most of us here in the U.S. That is at the I feel everything degree. In Sagittarius, it's not afraid to feel anything. Sagittarius is the sign that will go to full optimism and full depression and do it within 20 minutes. So it is a place where we could open ourselves up to all kinds of feelings. But at the full moon, that's where the sun is really just putting an emphasis on something that maybe you're feeling that you need to detach from, disassociate from, remove yourself from. And that's why it's putting it on focus. That's why it's showing it to you. Look here, because remember, the moon doesn't have its own illumination. It gets it from the sun, and the sun being our heart, the core part of who we are, shining on that emotion. So for us, Christopher, I think that this just brings to us, because it's a moon, it's a sun in Gemini where our thoughts need to move into our emotions, need to move into our beliefs, that it's a total package, that we're at the point now where we've worked on our emotions, we've worked on our beliefs, we've worked on our feelings. Now we got to work on all three together. That these three things get to work as a wheel, as a gear, that if you look at them as three gears working together, that now they're doing this and just going on and on with it. So I think that that's going to be powerful, but it's also a moon that's just going to bring up a whole lot of feelings. And remember, feelings are not always fact. Pay attention to them, see what they have to teach you, and then go from there about what you want to do with them. But they've got to be reconciled with the mind. They have to be reconciled with the heart. They have to be reconciled with the belief system, all of that. We're at a point now where these systems are not working separately. They need to be worked together. So, Christopher, I'm looking forward to that full moon, but I would be cautious about it as well. Enthusiastic, but cautious as well.
Yes, take it with care and cautiousness as far as the time you take to respond to it and the nurturing you do. And, the zero, you're going to have to put down some boundaries, drop some zeros about certain things. I don't think it'll be a complete surprise. I have a sense that this was a fated karmic turn. So this is sort of, to me, this is sort of like you thought you were dating the perfect partner and you walk in on them and cheating. Well, that's a step 20 moment. Like, whoops, I'm just cutting off that future. Boom. Suddenly the wedding's over. Everything's over. Like everything is cut. Like every emotional attachment is cut. I can never unsee that again. So it can be painful in that sense. But if you live those moments in your life, you know that God was always getting you out sooner than later. And you were grateful later in the hindsight of it. So it's emotional, it's passionate, but there's a zero there. You got to cauterize that wound.
It's what I call the cosmic 2x4, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Add a cauterization there to it as well.
Yeah.
Then we have some more conflict. The sun squares the nodes on Friday. And then Saturday, Venus opposes Black Moon Lilith. Bom, bom, bom. Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio, folks, is a setup for a lot of overreacting. Let me tell you right now. Okay. Remember, Scorpio, when Scorpio is dramatic and immature, and they are at some stage in their life, they get mature pretty early, like around age 2. But before that, they are, just like us, vulnerable. And, they have, when they ultimately say no to something, it is an absolute hell no, ain't gonna happen, right? But when they fall into their drama and they're not without those boundaries, they are like the most dramatic, the most angry, the most, they just take it to the absolute extreme, like to feel where the boundary is. And so Black Lilith and Scorpio is doing that. It's taking us to the absolute extreme of what that fear is, right? Total terrified, or capacity to fall into that terror. Now remember, it's not really there. Black Lilith is revealing and just sort of letting out like stinky air over a garbage dump. The stinky air, the stink pipes to let the stuff out. That's what Black Lilith is. She's letting out all the stink because that is explosive if it doesn't get out here now. And so what's interesting is we're doing all this Taurus building. Everything's under construction. We're manifesting. The sun's going to conjunct Uranus and take us to the moon. And thank God, because it was built on a landfill, we like cleaning up all that stink, getting it out of there. So the point is like when that stuff comes, just realize this is your fear. This needs to go. You don't have to smell it if you don't give it more attention, but don't ignore it or repress it because it's going to come back. Yeah.
But here's the other thing, though, Christopher. That's at 8 degrees, Saturn ruled degree. That if you decide to engage with Black Moon Lilith, I think she's going to be quite the inquisitor on you as well. Like, wait a minute, you're not disciplined enough to do that. You don't have enough smarts to do that. The last time you did that, you failed. You don't have the system together in order to do that. You don't understand everything that this industry takes. Blah, 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 blah. The inquisitor, if you decide to move into it, because Saturn can be that when you are misusing it as a form of control, but instead of teaching. And so that could be a part of how that unfolds as well.
Well, I think it's not the inquisitor, it's the interrogator.
There we go.
And you are tied up and doing water torture right now. And under that water torture, that's the sort of thing. I mean, Scorpios come at you. They're relentless, right? As far as poke, poke, poke. And they keep their good pokes and stingers for last, right? So if you thought you're stung now, wait till you're about to hear about yourself. I agree with all of that. I think what will happen is that you will have some sort of thing where you have to decide, and probably what you're deciding is you decide you believe yourself or not. Like, if the world will never be convinced. It's like, they'll never be convinced. Those people, them, that side, those part of the Democrats or those part of the Republicans, like everyone's like in the same spot. Like they're never going to believe. You reach this point where it's like, you're not going to convince anyone else. You have to be convinced yourself. And there'll be a moment where you are convinced and you decide you're convinced and you no longer need outer world examples of it. You're just going to live it on the inside. And so, it's not about being right or wrong in the past. Hopefully you're mostly wrong, because if you were not mostly wrong in the past, then you're about to be wrong now. Let me tell you.
There we go.
So let's talk about it. Well, we have one more commercial break, Conscious Capitalism and Mark Wright, and we'll be right back after this.
My name is Mark Wright. I'm an architecture engineer. I run a nonprofit. It's a housing development organization. So I'm a developer. I also have a document management company, engineering. So I would say my light work is really with my nonprofit, where I provide affordable housing for people that's underdeserved, those with disabilities, victims of homeless, victims of domestic violence.
Brilliant. And to this day, how many homes have you provided?
Oh, let's see. If I had to count, over 60 homes, I would say probably 64, 65 homes. We've served over 500 families. We sell a lot, and we do retain some of our rental homes. And we have 125 homes being built now. So those are coming out the ground right now. So we are busy.
Wow, 125 at once.
At once, unfortunately.
You beat Jimmy Carter.
It was supposed to be really spaced out, but the way things kind of fell, all of them kind of fell at the exact same time. So now they're all coming out the ground at the same time. But hey, we feel blessed, so we'll continue.
Oh, Mark Wright, he's so delightful. He is our second key conversation that we have. We have key conversations at Unite the Light, not just speakers and panelists. We're trying to mix it up. We want to be very entertaining. We got a very special secret that's coming out on Saturday, I think, is going to come out. But Mark is terrific, man. He is the real deal. Self-made, cool, Virgo brilliant, just so kind.
I'm looking forward to meeting him and shaking his hand and just telling him, because I've been looking him up, and he's really setting an example in an industry where people have said you can't do it that way, and here he is turning around and doing it that way.
I love it, and he just has a spirit in him that's so sharp and brilliant in the way he goes with strategy. One of the most profound things he says, "I don't believe in donations." It's like, well, then how do you get the money? But to me, it's like a Papa Lightworker. This is a guy who was a Lightworker long before I was born and has been doing it since day one. And this is the classic Lightworker that you're used to. The people who are reaching out to the local environment. So we want to applaud that at Unite the Light for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad that we'll be celebrating him.
Indeed. And let's celebrate this final week and get ourselves out of here, Robbie. Week 4, tell us about it. How's this month end up?
All right, let's get into the home stretch of this mega presentation, talking about week 4 that occurs June 15th through the 20th, ending up with steps 25 to 29. So this is getting us out of the Gemini transit. It is a week that we are saying that you are scanning for cosmic viruses and running system checks, and that the subplot is installing emotional upgrades. Now, for an analogy for you, when you do download all that new stuff, when you do have the new app update on the phone, when you install the new software, you always have to check and see if it's working with everything else, and especially if it's working with your operating system, to see if it's working with this or working with that. And there's always a hiccup. There's always a hiccup. Sometimes when I'm installing that Adobe stuff, my graphics pad doesn't work, and I have to go down and do something else with it. So you're scanning it. You're looking for cosmic viruses. Cosmic viruses meaning the disbeliefs, maybe the propaganda, gaslighting, and other kinds of influence from other people. You're running the system check. How is this working against my actions, what I'm opening up to, the decisions I'm making, and ultimately what I want to become? So it's basing it about upgrading all those other things and what is it doing for all of that. But the upgrades are the emotional upgrades, because again, look at everything that's happening, look at everything that's going on. And if your emotions are sitting there and going, wah, 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 you are behind the game. Your junior level, master level doesn't sit and complain. It doesn't go wah, wah, wah. It understands why it feels that way and then makes choices for how it can feel better. It doesn't wait for all of this to change. It realizes none of this will change if it still sits in that dirty diaper that it does. So as we go through the week, I think it's a very emotional week, but it's a week in which you get to control them. You're the one installing the upgrades. Make sure that you're installing the most recent version, not one that was 10 versions ago. And then there's this question that we're going to ask for the week. Let's look at that question before I go over what we're going to look at with the rest of the week.
All right, well, I'll tell you the question is very simple. What future do I feel and believe will stick? Mm-hmm. And I think, Robbie, you've said it set. The thing is, we're in the step 20s in the master level. Even though it's Gemini, where the mind is the ruling state of awareness and our heart's engaging with our mind, we have Jupiter in Cancer. And so we have suddenly this, inflammation of the terrible twos, right? And so all these feelings come up. And these feelings, by the way, are why people don't materialize their dreams, because their emotions are unsettled, unfixed, and so, the moon is the multiplier of what makes things go into abundance. You can't have abundance until after step 20. That is when you bring all your feelings and all your feelings and. So if you bring the terrible twos to the and, well, you're destroying things. Yeah. And so even it doesn't matter. Like, you feel emotional, you hold it in, pipe's going to burst. Your car's going to break down, tire's going to blow. These under emotional pressure, this just creates problems in your life. So you have to address it. And so one way out, I think, is this technique you gave them with what future do I feel and believe will stick, because the way to manipulate or to manage feelings is to say, okay, I feel this way, but I want to feel this way. How do I get over here? How do I get this way? If you don't identify that goal feeling, right, in the process of nurturing yourself, there's no hope. If you say, no, I want to feel this way, and I believe it's going to happen, well, now the emotions can stop worrying, because now we're going somewhere, that we're being directed to another thing. It's not going to stay this way unless you want to dwell on it. And so I think that's a good question to ask as we go through it. Yeah.
Well, and you bring up a good point. Emotions have got to go somewhere. And if they're not going internal, if you're doing something to not go internal with them, then they will go on out here somewhere. Yeah. And in the things that you need to move forward in life the most, cars are one of them, or things that you need in your daily routine, like the shower, like your oven, like the air conditioning. So it'll make its presence known to you. It will let you know it's talking to you. All right, let's go over then what is going on this week. And part of why I wanted to go over that question about what future do I feel and believe will stick is because we've got 3 squares during this week. We have one on Sunday, June 15th, in which Mars is going to square Uranus at 28. The same day, Jupiter will square Saturn at 1 degree. And then later in the week on the 18th, Jupiter is going to square Neptune. Now, that's some big planets. Those are Uranus and Jupiter and Saturn and Neptune involved in those squares, and then also with Mars. So what future do I believe will stick? The one that you decide to move to, a square. A square is a change in direction. So if you decide I'm going to move to the future where I'm going to feel better, I believe it's there, I believe it's possible, then that's the square pivot. That's where you're going to do it. And so with that square of Mars and Uranus, do I take action to change that, to initiate a innovation in my emotion? Jupiter squaring Saturn. Am I using mass and movement and momentum to make my decision toward 1 degree to ultimately love myself? And then when Jupiter squares Neptune, that I can move into the feeling of it, and that it's actually a very internal, spiritually related kind of a feeling. And that's just those 3 squares right there. But then, Christopher, take us home on this one. Mars moves into Virgo.
I wouldn't call it home, but I will say it is to some people, mostly people who are, what do you call it? Like collect everything. I can't remember. But nonetheless, Mars in Virgo means a lot of things. One, thank God it's done with this damn Leo retrograde stuff. I mean, we have had Mars in basically 2 signs half the year, Leo and Cancer. It's been, what's the word? Repetitious. That's the word. Mars in Virgo means a couple of things. 1, our ego's now focused on the details. 2, our ego's focused on the details. That means we're defensive to the details. We maybe are fighting the details instead of remembering we're the ones that created those details, and we can uncreate them if we created them. So chill out, Mars, right? So I think the hard part here is not going Virgo on a bad day, Virgo hangry. Don't go Virgo hangry on this, okay? A hungry Virgo finds out you didn't do the work. Oh my God, you're under some wrath there, right? If anyone's worked with Virgos. You don't want to be a hangry Virgo. You want to be a loving, nursing Virgo, the nursing side that, you just need more love. You just need more attention. You need to love yourself one and love yourself some more. Love yourself one, love yourself some more. To me, that is what you want to sort of get your mantra in. But what's happening here is Mars is actually walking through your life, your reality, way before Virgo. And Mars is saying, delete, 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 delete. You're basically telling the universe, I want all this cut. I want all this burned down, this forest here. Because the South Node is heading for you. And that South Node Virgo is going to destroy and completely recycle, complete rehab and recycle of your reality in your life. Our life will not be the same 1 year from now, and it will not be the same 18 months into that when when the nodes move now into the next sign. It will not be the same, right? So this is basically don't get defensive. Just realize this is you marking territory for breakdown and removal.
And to make sure that you are paying attention to it, because this could impact health aspects as well. This is Virgo. So your overall wellness, your mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health, and Mars there, and your inability to take action. We're going to have to take action as we're moving through the rest of 2025. So for some of you, it will mean pay attention to your health as well. And if Mars is showing where there are some health issues, to not ignore those.
Good point. Especially if you suffer from any type of inflammation. Inflammation diseases will get worse, okay? So we've learned about inflammation. There's things that make your body flame up. Stop it. Mars is to start or stop. Stop it. You know what I mean? Like, because I think if you're a person with high blood pressure, you're a person any kind of disease that involves the tissue flaring up, oh, boys are going to flare up, because this is your ego resisting what is healthy for you, Virgo.
Yeah.
Right? So be cautious of that. And don't get into a detailed fight with the Virgo during this time. Impossible. You will not win. Just walk away. Just walk away. Don't even try it.
Don't even try.
Don't even try it. Well, it's been fun, Robbie. We were at a full, cool 90 minutes. We're pulling the show off perfectly, I'd say. I'm so happy. Very Mars and Virgo perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish you well. I'll see you at Unite the Light. Let's get some selfies. I don't think we got any selfies together last year.
I think we got one, but it was one that I don't think we made public or anything, but I've got it. For $1.98, I'll sell it to anybody who wants it.
It's a moment when Robbie is conjuring up a spell. There's lightning coming through your hair. It's pretty crazy. And boy, did you pull that one off. We all had pumpkin pie for 2 hours. It was just so good. It was so good. Oh, that was good pie. I don't know where you pulled that up from, what lifetime, but that was good.
Well, let me just say this year's Unite the Light in Nashville is somewhat in my backyard. You're going to be here in the southern United States. So I'm here to welcome you, say, welcome to y'all. And I'm looking forward to giving people hugs, looking forward to giving you a big one there, Christopher, and to all of our Sirius Joy staff, and just saying hello to everybody.
Oh, that's a sweetie. And I'm bringing my Pepto-Bismol because it's going to be spicy in that food world. Said the So, and special thanks to our team at Sirius Joy. You've done such a remarkable job. We're not quite there yet, but we're almost there. I'm just proud of you. I just want to say how grateful I am for you. We are the light, and I'm proud of us. All right, friends. See you next month for Mega Monthly Cancer. Probably wearing raincoats and crying, but we'll be here with you.
We'll all have umbrellas.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking kind of like this galoshes. Until next month, we love you.
All right. Love and blessings to you all.
Love be.
Whether you have answers or you're seeking answers,
there's something here for everyone.
The love that is felt in the room, it's unmatched.
Talking to all these other people in all these different stages of life.
Energy changing, next level.
It's allowing me to have tears of joy, not the tears of sadness that I've had for so long.
They've all been super inspiring.
I've been brought to tears.
I'm learning how to love myself.
I've never felt so comfortable in my life.
It has been a blast. Highly recommend.